Have you ever wondered why, in the wealthiest homes of the Gilded Age, the bedrooms of the ladies of the house often resembled the sets of a tragic play with no audience? Behind the grand facades of Fifth Avenue and Newport mansions lay a silence that became deafening for many young women as soon as the last chords of the wedding march had faded away. The luxurious interiors designed to demonstrate the power and status of the family, in fact, turned into golden cages where feelings were replaced by etiquette and personal happiness was sacrificed to public opinion. We are used to seeing the glamorous side of that era through the prism of cinema and novels, but the reality faced by young brides was far from romantic dreams. These were rooms where illusions were shattered, where loneliness was felt particularly acutely against the backdrop of velvet and gilding, and where women learned to wear a mask of well-being, hiding their true pain. Watch this video to the end, and you will learn how the most sought-after brides of the century paid with their freedom and peace of mind for the right to wear family diamonds within the cold walls of their bedrooms. What if I told you that the first night as a lawful wife was often not the beginning of a fairy tale, but the moment when all a girl's hopes were dashed and the beginning of a great silence? For a young Victorian girl, raised in strictness and ignorance, the transition from her parents' home to her husband's was a shocking and abrupt event. She entered a bedroom decorated by the best craftsmen in Europe, expecting the celebration to continue, but was confronted with the frightening reality of marital duty. She had to learn to live with a man who often remained a stranger to her, despite their union. The fear and confusion she felt could not be shown, for her upbringing demanded obedience and restraint. The tears she shed into her pillow during those first nights became the first secret kept by the walls of these magnificent mansions. The society of that time dictated that marriage was primarily an economic and social alliance, and feelings were only a pleasant but optional addition. The young wife quickly realized that her role was reduced to decorating the house and continuing the family line, and that few people were interested in her inner world. It was especially difficult for those whose marriages were arranged by their parents, without the slightest sympathy on the part of the newlyweds. In such cases, the bedroom turned into a field of cold war, or even worse, icy indifference. The woman felt like an object that had been moved from one shelf to another, more expensive and higher. The realization that decades of life with an unloved person lay ahead overwhelmed her with despair during these hours of solitude. But there was no way out. Divorce was considered shameful, and all that remained was to resign herself and accept her fate. This is how the stories of many great society ladies whose portraits we see in museums began. It was in the first weeks of marriage that the armor was formed that would later protect the woman from pain, but also prevent her from feeling joy. She learned to lock away her feelings, the key to which was often lost forever. The bedroom became a place where she took off her jewelry, but put on the armor of indifference in order to survive. This transformation was invisible to those around her, but fatal to the woman's soul. The illusions of youth melted away, giving way to pragmatism and cold calculation, which became her only support. Could you live your life in a golden cage, maintaining outward calm while experiencing an inner storm? Share your opinion in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Are you ready to learn the truth about how the layout and decoration of these rooms were designed to enhance the feeling of isolation? The architecture of Gilded Age mansions did not suggest intimacy or comfort in the modern sense of the word. The bedrooms of the ladies of the house were often located in a specific wing of the house, separated from the rest of the world by long corridors and enfilades of rooms. This distance was not just physical, it symbolized the distance between a woman's private life and the bustling life of the outside world. Huge windows covered with multi-layered velvet curtains let in almost no sunlight, creating eternal twilight. In this gloom, time flowed differently, slowing down and turning every hour into a test of patience. The color scheme of these bedrooms also often played a cruel joke on the psyche of their inhabitants. The dark tones popular at the time, burgundy, emerald, dark blue, combined with heavy wood created an oppressive atmosphere. The walls covered with silk or damask absorbed sound, creating a vacuum in which one's own thoughts seemed frighteningly loud. The absence of bright, cheerful colors contributed to the development of melancholy and despondency. Women woke up and fell asleep surrounded by dark shadows that seemed to drain their vitality. It was a realm of eternal twilight, where joy seemed like an unwelcome guest. Heating in such huge mansions was often inefficient, and the bedrooms were constantly cold. Women wrapped themselves in shawls and fur capes even when in bed, which only intensified the feeling of physical discomfort and unease. The cold penetrated not only their clothes but also their souls, becoming a constant companion in their lives. The fireplace, which was lit by servants, provided warmth only for a short time and only in the immediate vicinity of the fire. The rest of the room remained icy, making the woman feel trapped in an ice palace. This cold became a metaphor for relationships in the family, where the warmth of human communication was just as rare. A woman could spend her whole life here without ever feeling at home. She was the keeper of a hearth without fire and the mistress of a bedroom without love. It was a tragedy played out against a backdrop of incredible beauty. It was this disharmony between external glamour and internal emptiness that broke the psyche of many women. They began to hate this luxury, which had become the price of their freedom. Every object in the room reminded them of the deal they had made or that had been made for them. And in this hatred of the things around them, they gradually lost their love for themselves. Do you think material goods can compensate for the lack of emotional warmth? Or do they only make the cold more unbearable? Find out in the next chapter how things enslaved their owners. What if I told you that the things in these bedrooms had more power than their living owners? A society lady's morning did not begin with a pleasant stretch in bed, but with the start of a complex mechanism in which she was only a central part. The dressing rooms adjoining the bedroom were crammed with dresses, each weighing kilograms and requiring the help of several people to put on. Corsets, crinolines, bustles, all these constructions turned the female body into an architectural object, encased in whalebone and steel. The process of getting dressed took hours, and all this time the woman had to stand still while the maids tightened the lacing, literally squeezing the air out of her. It was daily torture, elevated to the rank of privilege and beauty. The dressing table was an altar on which naturalness was sacrificed. Countless jars of powder, blush, ointments, curling tongs heated over a fire, all served one purpose: to create a mask. A woman had no right to look tired, pale, or upset. She had to be the ideal of beauty, regardless of how she felt. The mirror above the table did not see a person's face, but a canvas on which layers of social expectations were applied. Every morning began with the disappearance of the real woman and the appearance of the impeccable socialite in her place. And this ritual of erasing one's personality took place within the walls of the bedroom. The jewelry stored in safes and boxes was not just accessories, but shackles testifying to her husband's wealth. Heavy necklaces, tiaras, bracelets, all of this weighed her down physically, leaving marks on her skin, and morally reminding her of her status as a trophy. Putting on the family diamonds in front of the mirror, the woman saw how the sparkle of the stones eclipsed the sparkle in her eyes. She was just a mannequin for displaying the family's wealth, and the bedroom was the place where this mannequin was prepared for display. The things owned her, dictating how she should move, how she should breathe, how she should hold her head, depriving her of the slightest opportunity for spontaneous gesture. The woman lived in a museum where nothing could be touched so as not to disturb the composition. Even personal items such as letters or diaries were often hidden in secretaries with cunning locks, because there was no concept of privacy in this house. Things became her only confidants, silent listeners to her mute monologues. Gifts from her husband, often brought to the bedroom in velvet boxes, were a kind of ransom for indifference or infidelity. Another necklace or ring was perceived not as a sign of love, but as payment for silence and patience. These gifts accumulated in boxes, cold and beautiful, like the life of their owner. The woman ran her fingers over them, remembering not moments of joy, but moments of humiliation that they were supposed to smooth over. Thus, the bedroom became a treasure trove full of pain. The glitter of gold and the sparkle of stone did not please the eye here, but blinded it, reminding her that all this was only the price paid for lost freedom. The objects became jailers, guarding their captive more reliably than any locks. Like this if you are also struck by the contrast between the outward luxury and the inner bondage of these women. Guess what happened next when American money met English titles in the bedrooms of ancient castles? The phenomenon of dollar princesses became one of the most dramatic chapters of the era. Young American women, heirs to the colossal fortunes of the Vanderbilts, Astors, and other industrial magnates, traveled across the ocean to marry impoverished British aristocrats. They exchanged the comfort of steam heating and running water for the icy drafts of ancestral castles, where time seemed to have stopped centuries ago. Their bedrooms within these ancient walls were grand in scale but completely unsuitable for the pampered American women. Consuelo Vanderbilt, the most famous of these brides, described her first night at Blenheim Castle as plunging into a cold abyss. The bedroom was the size of a ballroom, the fireplace was smoking, and the wind whistled through the cracks in the old windows. The girl, accustomed to the warm and bright mansions of New York, found herself in a stone sack, where even the water in the wash jug was covered with a crust of ice by morning. This physical cold was only a prelude to the emotional cold that emanated from her new family and surroundings. Aristocratic society looked down on the upstarts, accepting their money but despising their origins. There was no privacy in these bedrooms. Servants on English estates felt they were in charge and strictly enforced centuries-old traditions. A young duchess or countess could be reprimanded for a misplaced comb or for not looking prim enough in her own bed. American spontaneity and liveliness were considered bad form here and were systematically eradicated. The bedroom became a class of strict discipline, where a young woman was remolded according to the standards of the British aristocracy. She had to forget who she was and become the living embodiment of the title her father had bought. The stories of these women are stories of how a beautiful facade and a loud title were paid for with a living human soul. They were living investments locked away in the most expensive interiors in the world. And when the bedroom doors closed, the titled person turned into a lonely, frozen girl far from home. Do you think the title of Duchess was worth such deprivation and mental anguish? Within these gilded walls, an invisible but cruel war was being waged, with etiquette as its weapon. The bedroom was not a zone free from rules. On the contrary, it was here that regulations intruded into the most intimate spheres of life. There was a strict protocol governing when and how a husband could visit his wife, how they should behave when alone, and what they should talk about. Spontaneity was forbidden. Even passion had to be moderate and appropriate to one's position. A woman could not simply close the door and ask not to be disturbed. She had duties to her husband, to the servants, and to her daily schedule. Often spouses had separate bedrooms, which was considered a sign of high status and aristocracy. This created a physical distance that had to be overcome each time, making it a kind of formal visit. The husband knocked on the door, received permission to enter, and this turned marital intimacy into a formal act. In such relationships, there was no place for heart-to-heart conversations at night, for laughter under the same blanket, or for morning tea together in bed. Each lived in their own isolated space, meeting only to fulfill their marital duties. The morning began with the arrival of the maid, who drew back the curtains and brought breakfast. From that moment on, the woman no longer belonged to herself. She had to look dignified even in her nightgown, had to give orders around the house, review invitations and menus. The bedroom became a headquarters from which the complex machinery of social life was managed. There was no room for weakness or laziness here. The mechanism had to work flawlessly. There was often a wall of silence between spouses regarding any unpleasant topics. The husband's financial problems, his extramarital affairs, or political turmoil were not discussed in the bedroom. The wife had to be a pleasant conversationalist, soothing and pleasing to the eye. Any attempts to sort things out or express dissatisfaction were met with icy politeness. Quarrels were considered the lot of commoners. Aristocrats simply stopped noticing each other. Even death did not exempt one from etiquette. Mourning clothes, the decoration of the deceased's room, the farewell ritual, everything was planned down to the smallest detail. The bedroom became the final stage where a woman played her final role as a silent and impeccable lady. It was a triumph of form over substance that lasted from the first wedding night to the last breath. In this silent war, there were no winners, only victims dressed in silk and velvet. The illusion of a perfect life was too costly, but it was impossible to admit it. Bedrooms kept the secret of this daily battle to save face while completely losing oneself. What if I told you that many of these women spent months in bed as prescribed by their doctors? In the Gilded Age, medicine had a peculiar view of women's health. Any display of discontent, sadness, anxiety, or desire to do anything more than embroidery was often attributed to nervous exhaustion or hysteria. The bedroom became a ward for the mentally ill, only with silk wallpaper. The famous treatment by rest, popularized by Dr. Silas Weir Mitchell, prescribed complete isolation, bed rest, and abstinence from any intellectual activity for women. Women were forbidden to read, write, draw, or even engage in long conversations. They had to lie in bed, drink heavy cream to gain weight and calm their nerves. Imagine an active, intelligent woman locked up within four walls and forced to stare at a pattern on the wallpaper for hours on end. This treatment often led to even deeper depression and real mental disorders. Charlotte Perkins Gilman's famous short story, The Yellow Wallpaper, describes this horror of slowly going mad in a locked room under the guise of caring for one's health. It was a convenient way for husbands and society to control inconvenient wives. If a woman began to show character or demand freedom, she was declared nervous and sent to bed. The bedroom became a place of exile, where the rebellious spirit was lulled to sleep by chemicals and idleness. Under the guise of caring for the fragile female body, systematic suppression of personality took place. Women were convinced that they were sick, weak, and incapable of real life. The days merged into an endless gray sequence. A morning visit from the doctor, medication, a light lunch on a tray, more medication, sleep. The windows were often curtained so that the light would not irritate her sick nerves. In this artificial darkness, she lost all sense of time and reality. She began to live in a world of dreams and hallucinations, which seemed to her more vivid and real than boring reality. This is how the myth of the fragile, sickly aristocrat who needed constant care and rest was created. This myth was convenient for everyone except the women themselves. It justified their exclusion from active life and locked them in the golden cages of their bedrooms. Sometimes when we look at old photographs of languid ladies on couches, we see a romantic image. But in reality, we are looking at victims of medical error and social pressure. What do you think? Is idleness a blessing or a punishment for a person? Watch until the end to find out who was the only witness to their real lives. Behind the closed doors of the master's bedrooms, there was always a third party, invisible but omnipresent. The servants, maids, chambermaids, and nannies knew more about their mistresses than their husbands, parents, or confessors. They were the ones who laced up their corsets, brought them their medicine, changed their tear-stained pillowcases, and saw the bruises hidden under the lace. For an aristocrat, undressing in front of her husband was an event, but undressing in front of her maid was a daily routine. This created a strange, forced intimacy, devoid of real friendly warmth, because the social gap between them was enormous. Relationships with personal maids were often complicated. On the one hand, she was the closest person with whom a great deal of time was spent. On the other hand, the maid was an employee who could be fired at any moment, or even worse, bribed by the husband to spy. Many husbands did indeed pay maids for information about their wives' behavior, correspondence, and moods. The bedroom became a zone of espionage, where trust was an unaffordable luxury. Often it was the maids who saved their mistresses from complete despair, simply by listening to them or offering silent support. There were cases of sincere devotion when a maid became the only friend and ally in a hostile household. But more often than not, these relationships were based on subordination and silence. Servants see everything but say nothing. This rule was broken only in the most extreme cases. The bedroom, thus, was a passageway for the staff, a stage for the husband, and a golden cage for the wife. The maid's gaze was a constant reminder that the mistress's life did not belong to her, that she was an object of care and observation, not the subject of her own destiny. And when the lights went out and the maid left, leaving the mistress in the dark, it was the only moment of relative freedom. But even in this darkness, there remained the knowledge that in the morning the door would open again, and the performance would continue under the watchful eye of a stranger. A society lady's bedroom was not only a boudoir but also an office. In the corner of the room, as a rule, stood an elegant secretary desk, behind which the woman spent hours performing her main task, maintaining social connections. This was not just a whim, but hard work on which the family's position in society depended. Writing letters, responding to invitations, expressing condolences and congratulations was an endless conveyor belt that required attention, tact, and calligraphic handwriting. Hundreds of letters a week passed through the hands of the lady of the house. Every word was weighed. Every phrase had to comply with a complex code of etiquette. A mistake in address, a delay in reply, or the wrong tone could cost the family its reputation or lead to social ostracism. The woman sat at a table in her bedroom, bent over the paper until her back and fingers ached, but she could not stop. This was high society bureaucracy, and it was ruthless. In addition to letters, menus for dinner parties were drawn up here, guest seating arrangements were planned, which was a real diplomatic puzzle, and household accounts were kept. The bedroom became a command center from which the enormous ship of social life was steered. The woman was the captain, who had no right to leave the bridge even during storms of personal turmoil. This responsibility weighed heavily, turning a cozy corner into a workplace. Other letters were written at this table. Secret letters full of pain and anguish, addressed perhaps to a mother or childhood friend. But often such letters were immediately burned in the fireplace, as the risk of them being read by her husband or servants was too great. The secretary kept drafts of unfulfilled hopes and unspoken grievances. Paper would have endured anything, but social norms would not. It was a job without weekends or holidays, without pay or recognition. It was considered a natural occupation for a lady, easy and pleasant. No one saw it as hard work. No one appreciated the effort. The result was taken for granted, and any mistake was seen as a disaster. So, in the silence of the bedroom, accompanied by the scratching of a pen, life passed. Words, words, words. Millions of polite words, behind which lay the screaming silence of loneliness. It was a paper maze from which there was no escape. Over time, when the duty to the family had been fulfilled and heirs had been born, a regime of cold neutrality often established itself between the spouses. The wife's bedroom became a completely sovereign territory where the husband entered less and less often and then stopped appearing altogether. This was the time of so-called separate lives, when two complete strangers lived under the same roof, connected only by their surname and their children. And this alienation was physically palpable in the air of the room. The double bed, a symbol of marital unity, became a mockery. The woman slept alone on the huge bed, feeling the coldness of the sheets next to her. But often this loneliness brought not sadness, but relief. The absence of her husband meant there was no need to pretend, to fulfill her duty, to endure unwanted touches. The bedroom became a refuge from marriage, a fortress of solitude where she could finally take off her mask. Men often took open mistresses, living a second life full of passion and entertainment. The wife knew about it, the servants knew, the world knew, but she had to maintain a proud silence, pretending that nothing was happening. Her bedroom was a place where she swallowed her resentment, where her pride fought against humiliation. She couldn't make a scene, she couldn't leave. All she could do was maintain her dignity in her isolation. The wall saw the woman transform from a young, hopeful girl into a stately, cold matron, and then into a lonely old woman. This process took place slowly, day after day, night after night, and no one could stop this decline. Separate bedrooms are a symbol of the collapse of the Victorian ideal of family. Behind the beautiful facade lay the ruins of human relationships, and women were the guardians of these ruins, doomed to live among the debris of their happiness until the very end. But even in this loneliness, there was pride. They had endured, they had not broken, they had done their duty. It was a bitter victory, but a victory nonetheless. At the end of her life, the bedroom became the whole world for a woman. The circle narrowed to the size of a single room, where days filled with memories passed. Here, among old photographs and faded letters, An elderly lady sorted through the beads of her fate, trying to understand when exactly everything went wrong. Illusions had long since faded, leaving only wisdom and quiet sadness. The bedroom, once a place of fear, then a place of work and duty, now became a place of reckoning. She looked at the things that had surrounded her for half a century. This dressing table had seen her as a young bride. This wardrobe had stored the dresses in which she had shone at balls. This armchair remembered how she had rocked her firstborn. These things were the only witnesses to her true story, the one that did not make it into the society chronicles. They knew about her tears, her prayers, her little secret joys, and now they were growing old with her. Her young granddaughters would come to visit their grandmother, admiring the romantic atmosphere of antiquity, not understanding how much pain was hidden behind those velvet curtains. For the new generation, these bedrooms were just beautiful decorations from the past. The old lady smiled at them, not wanting to shatter their illusions. Why scare young people with the truth about the golden cage? Let them believe in fairy tales while they can. In recent years, silence had ceased to be an enemy and had become a friend. In the silence, one could hear the voices of those who had passed away and relive moments from the past. The woman understood that her life, despite all the restrictions and losses, had been lived with dignity. She had paid a high price for her position, but she had not dishonored her family. We look at these interiors in museums and see beauty. But if you listen closely, you can hear the echoes of sighs, the rustle of silk, and quiet weeping. These are the voices of women who lived, loved, and suffered here, leaving us not only their possessions, but also a warning. All that glitters is not gold, and not every palace is a home. The history of these bedrooms is a lesson for us all. A lesson about the value of sincerity, freedom, and simple human warmth, which cannot be bought for any amount of money. And perhaps, looking back, we will learn to appreciate more what we have today. We have walked with you through the corridors of memory, peering into the most intimate corners of the lives of women in that glittering and cruel era. We have seen that behind the external splendor of the Gilded Age lay human tragedies, played out in the silence of luxurious bedrooms. These rooms witnessed broken hearts, unfulfilled hopes, and a quiet but desperate struggle for self-preservation. History has shown us that neither wealth nor titles are a guarantee of happiness, and sometimes they become its most insurmountable obstacle. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. Your interest in such profound topics is very important to us. What other hidden aspects of history or women's lives would you like us to cover in future episodes? Perhaps you are interested in the secrets of royal courts or the lives of women in other eras. Write your suggestions in the comments and be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new stories that make you think and feel.